The miles. First, let's talk about the guy at the very bottom. The miles, the basic legionary, the grunt. If you had no special skills, couldn't read, and didn't know anyone important, this is you. For the next 25 years, congratulations. You march 30 kilometers a day in full gear. You dig ditches. You build roads. You construct fortifications. You haul supplies. You repair equipment. You do whatever backbreaking labor the Legion demands, and you do it with a smile, because complaining gets you flogged. Your daily life is less glorious combat and more manual labor with occasional stabbing. Sure, you train with weapons, but most of your time is spent being Rome's construction crew. Every legionary is part soldier, part engineer, part laborer. You're expected to pitch tents, maintain your gear, ration food and water, and even care for wounded comrades. Your kit includes entrenching tools, a water skin, spare sandals, because nothing ruins morale faster than blistered feet, and enough equipment to make you question your life choices. The pay? Decent. You earn 225 denarii a year under Augustus, but don't get too excited. Deductions for food, gear, clothing, and lodging mean you're taking home maybe half that. And if you celebrated your recruitment a little too hard and gambled away your signing bonus, well, that's on you. But if you survive 25 years, you get a land grant, a pension, and the right to tell everyone you're a veteran. That's worth something. Probably the immunes. Now, if you had a useful skill, congratulations. You just upgraded to immune status. The name means exempt, as in exempt from the absolute worst grunt work. Notice I said worst, not all. You're still a soldier. You still train. You still fight. You're just not spending every waking moment digging latrines. Immunes were specialists, and the Legion had a shocking number of specialties. You had Medici, the doctors, performing field surgery with tools that would make modern surgeons faint. You had Fabri, engineers and craftsmen, who built everything from siege towers to bridges. Architecti surveyed terrain and designed camp layouts. Veterinarii kept the horses and pack animals alive, because a dead horse is a logistics nightmare. Librarii were the bookkeepers, tracking who got paid, who got supplies, and who owed money to whom. But wait, there's more. You had frumentari, grain collectors who also doubled as spies because why not? Speculators, scouts and intelligence gatherers. Ballistarii, artillery operators who managed the giant crossbows. Mensoras, land surveyors who mapped out everything. And custas armorum, the armory keeper, whose entire job was making sure weapons didn't go missing. The Romans basically said, we need specialists for everything, and then created 20 different job titles to prove it. The real winner, though? Literacy. If you could read and write, you were instantly valuable. Literacy rates were abysmal, maybe 10–15% across the empire. So anyone who could handle paperwork was golden. You'd become a librarius, shuffling documents, tracking inventories, recording orders. Your tentmates called you a nerd. You called them people who dig holes for a living. Fair trade. The optio. Now we're getting serious. The optio. The second in command of a century. The centurion's right-hand man. This was a big deal. If the centurion fell in battle, the optio immediately took command. If the centurion was busy with paperwork, strategy meetings, or anything else, the optio ran the show. This wasn't a specialist role. This was leadership. The optio's responsibilities were massive. He supervised training drills, enforced discipline, managed logistics, oversaw camp construction, handled supply distribution, and made sure every single soldier in the century was doing their job. He carried a hastel, a staff with a ball on the end, which he used to keep formations tight by literally prodding soldiers back into line. Subtle? No. Effective? Absolutely. But it wasn't all yelling and poking people with sticks. The optio also dealt with administrative nightmares. Inventorying supplies, coordinating transport wagons, ensuring food rations were accurate, gathering intelligence from scouts, liaising with auxiliary troops. He needed to be a fighter, a leader, an administrator, and a problem solver all at once. The Romans didn't believe in simple job descriptions. The pay reflected the responsibility. Optios earned double what a regular soldier made, but the real prize was the path forward. Prove yourself as an optio, and you were next in line for centurion. That's where the real power was. The centurion. Here we go. The centurion, the backbone of the Roman legion, commander of a century, roughly 80 men, though the number fluctuated. This is the rank everyone's heard of, and for good reason. Centurions were the officers who actually got things done. They led from the front, fought in the thick of battle, enforced discipline with an iron fist, and kept the entire military machine running. Becoming a centurion wasn't easy. You either climbed up from the ranks, which took years of proving yourself, or you were directly appointed if you had wealth, connections, or impressive military experience from another unit. Most centurions were career soldiers who started as regular legionaries and clawed their way up through sheer competence and survival. The job was brutal. In battle, you led from the front line, sword drawn, screaming orders louder than any horn. You were expected to be the first into the fight, the bravest, the most visible. Inspiring? Sure. Also a great way to die. Centurions had the highest mortality rate among officers because they refused to lead from the back. Honor and glory. Meet gruesome battlefield death. Off the battlefield, you were an administrator. You handled leave requests, supervised construction projects, judged disputes between soldiers, maintained camp order, managed supplies, and dealt with endless paperwork. You were part warrior, part bureaucrat, part judge, part babysitter. The pay was excellent, 15 to 20 times what a regular soldier earned, and you got real authority. Your word was law within your century. Soldiers feared you, and they should. That vine staff you carried, it wasn't decorative. It was for beatings. Discipline, Roman style. But not all centurions were equal. A legion had 59 centurions total, and they were ranked. You could climb through the centurion hierarchy based on merit, seniority, and not dying. The goal was to make it to the first cohort, where the elite centurions served, and at the very top of that pyramid sat one man. The Primus Pilus, the first spear, the most senior centurion in the entire legion, commander of the first century of the first cohort. This was as high as a common soldier could realistically climb. The Primus Pilus wasn't just a fighter, he was a legend, battle-scarred, experienced, respected by every soldier in the legion, and trusted by the commanding officers above him. To reach this rank, you needed to survive decades of service, multiple campaigns, countless battles, and prove yourself superior to 58 other centurions. The Primus Pilus attended war councils with the legate, the legion's overall commander. He advised on strategy, helped make critical decisions, and his opinion actually mattered. He was the link between the common soldiers and the aristocratic high command. The pay? Astronomical compared to a regular legionary. Some sources suggest 60 times the base pay. But it wasn't just about money. The prestige was immense. Retiring as a Primus Pilus meant you'd achieve the absolute peak of what a commoner could accomplish in the Roman military. You'd have your name etched into history, a fat pension, land grants, and the respect of the entire empire. Not bad for someone who probably started out digging ditches. After retiring, former Primus Pilus often became camp prefects or took on administrative roles in other legions. Some even received equestrian status, bumping them up a social class. The Roman dream, military edition. And now we hit the wall. Every rank above centurion required one thing: noble birth. The Tribunus Laticlavius, the broad-striped tribune, with a wider purple stripe that screamed, "My dad's a senator." Each legion had only one of these. This was a young man from a senatorial family, usually in his 20s, and this position was a critical stepping stone in the cursus honorum, the sequence of political offices that led to power in Rome. The Tribunus Laticlavius was the second in command of the entire legion. Not bad for someone whose main qualification was having the right last name. But to be fair, many of these men were well educated, trained in rhetoric, law, and military theory. They'd studied the great battles, read Caesar's commentaries, and at least theoretically knew what they were doing. Emphasis on theoretically. In practice, the smart ones relied heavily on their experienced centurions and the praefectus castrorum. The dumb ones got people killed and were quietly shipped back to Rome before they could cause more damage. But if you were competent, this role gave you real command experience, exposure to major military decisions, and a reputation that would follow you into politics. Serve well, and you could become a legate one day. Serve poorly, and your political career was over before it started. High stakes for a 2-3-year-old. The praefectus castrorum. Now here's an interesting one. The praefectus castrorum, the camp prefect, third in command of the legion, but arguably the most experienced officer in the entire structure. Why? Because this position was reserved for a former Primus Pilus, a senior centurion who'd already retired once, but got called back for one more job. This was the guy who actually knew how everything worked. He'd spent 30+ years in the legion, climbed from miles to Primus Pilus, survived more battles than anyone else in camp, and understood logistics, strategy, training, and discipline inside and out. His job was to handle the day-to-day operations of the legion: camp construction, supply management, equipment maintenance, training schedules, engineering projects, basically everything that kept 5,000 men fed, equipped, and ready to fight. While the young tribunes were learning on the job, and the legate was making strategic decisions, the praefectus castrorum was the one making sure the legion actually functioned. He was the old, grizzled veteran who'd seen it all, and everyone, including the aristocratic officers, respected him. He'd earned his position through blood, sweat, and decades of service. No political connections required, just pure competence. The pay matched his importance, and the role came with significant authority. If both the legate and the Tribunus Laticlavius were killed or incapacitated, the praefectus castrorum took command, a commoner commanding an entire legion. Rare, but possible. Rome knew talent when it saw it. The Legatus Legionis, And finally, the top of the pyramid, the Legatus Legionis, the legate, the overall commander of the legion. This was a senator, usually in his 30s or 40s, appointed directly by the emperor. You didn't earn this position through military skill alone. You needed political connections, family prestige, wealth, and imperial favor. Being a good general helped, but it wasn't the main requirement. The legate commanded roughly 5,000 soldiers, plus auxiliary units, made strategic decisions, coordinated with other legions, communicated with Rome, handled diplomacy with local populations, and bore ultimate responsibility for the legion's success or failure. Win battles, you're a hero. Lose battles, you're recalled to Rome in disgrace, possibly executed if the emperor's in a bad mood. Some legates were brilliant commanders who studied warfare, listened to their experienced officers, and led their men to victory. Others were aristocratic disasters who got their legion slaughtered because they valued glory over strategy. The quality varied wildly. But here's the thing. Even a mediocre legate could succeed if he was smart enough to listen to his praefectus castrorum and his senior centurions. The legion's real strength was in its structure, not any single commander. The pay was absurd, the power was immense, and a successful military command could launch you toward a governorship, consulship, or even higher. This was the prize job for ambitious senators. Command a legion, win some battles, don't embarrass yourself, and the political world was yours. Just try not to get killed by barbarians along the way. From the bottom to the top, miles to legate. 25 years of service if you were lucky. A lifetime of discipline, violence, and bureaucracy. And for what? Glory? Money? Land? A pension? Maybe all of it. Maybe none of it. But here's the real question. Knowing everything you know now, would you have joined? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and comment.